All right, so before we start this review, I do want to say that in a week's time, this upload schedule for my channel is going to be a lot better. There's going to be a lot more videos coming out through in the coming months. I can promise that. It's just that lately there's been some issue like with school. I've been dealing with school, and now we're getting out of like my first year, so we can get into the uploading a bit better now. But without further ado, let me talk about the what I want to review, and that is the Fallout TV show. Now, Fallout TV show is a show that was out on Prime, and it's based off the video game series Fallout. This show was a show that I never really expected to be this like godsend of a show or be too great. Worst case scenario, it would be the worst show ever. Best case scenario, I thought it would have just been meh or above average. Boy, I was wrong. This show, for some reason, is really good, and it doesn't feel like it should be really good, you know? This show, for some reason, encapsulates the games perfectly, right? It's so weird, because even Fallout games, they're not perfect. They are buggy, they break a lot, and not to mention the newer ones don't really hit as hard with the story. And I want to get into something about that later in this video when it comes to the story, because I feel like this show gives it a huge example of what Bethesda truly is and what they are good at, and if they actually aren't restrained. I want to get into that kind of topic, but first let's get into like the full-on review. Now, the main premise of Fallout is that it's a post-apocalyptic wasteland survival game, and you have to survive the waste after the bombs dropped in America, like over like 200 years ago. Usually, sometimes it's like pretty earlier on, like Fallout 76 takes place like over 20 years after the bombs, but most games take place like pretty far away after the bombs dropped. And generally, most of the games you start off as a vault dweller, which a vault dweller is someone who either went into the vault when it all started or was born in the vault. Generally, you're someone who would be born in the vault. Typically, there's only like, I'd say, well, I shouldn't say born in the vault. Actually, most of them you're not born in the vault, but that's like a whole heaping load of like a story there. But usually you start off in a vault in the games, and you go out into the waste and you're new to the waste. And most games start off like that. And that's essentially what this show does. I mean, the first scene isn't in the vault, it's of the bombs dropping in the first scene of the show, but our main character, Lucy, is like starts off in the vault and goes out into the waste after her father gets kidnapped by raiders, and because they attacked and infiltrated the vault. And she goes out to try and find her father. Now, she's the first main character. She's kind of like the goody two shoes of the show, the goody two shoes character, right? She believes in the rules, laws, and like civilized behavior, and she doesn't believe in like killing, and she doesn't want to like commit violence. She will try to commit violence mostly if that's what she has to come to, but even then, she doesn't really actually go and kill anyone, really. She mostly just tranquilizes them with, like, darts to try and make the non-lethal way to take a person out. Which really cements, like, the type of character she is. She's, like, the good character. And then you got Maximus. Now, Maximus, his character is, he's a part of the Brotherhood of Steel, and his character isn't good, right? Lucy's the good character, but Maximus, he's not the good character, but like the neutral character. If you were to play the games and you play the neutral character and not like the pacifist kind of character, you know what I mean? But he's not evil, he's not bad. He kind of does things because the waste messes you up in that type of way to do these bad things, but he doesn't want to do these bad things. He wants to do the good thing. He wants to do the right thing. I personally think in this show, though, I think his character is going to be the example in other seasons of someone who wants to be good and you root for him to be good, but I think his character is going to go down the path of being evil. I personally think he's going to go corrupt, and then he's not, and he's gonna lose that good edge to him. I personally think is what his character is gonna go through. But that's just my personal thought based off in the show and how his character seems to go through in the season. And then now you get the third character. Now the third character is the Ghoul. Now before I explain who the Ghoul is, I got to explain what a Ghoul is in the Fallout series. Pretty much, ghouls in the Fallout series are people who were exposed to so much radiation that it decayed their skin and makes them almost look like corpses. But here's the thing. Ghouls are near immortal. They don't really die from old age or from sickness. And here's a little kind of fact. Drugs don't affect them the same way, right? There's actually a plot line in Fallout 3 where you had to go and get like sugar bombs for someone to make a more improved jet, which is a drug in Fallout, because jet doesn't really affect them the same way as a regular person, because, you know, drugs don't affect them the same way. But the Ghoul in the show, the character of the Ghoul, is basically a pre-war Ghoul, and a pre-war Ghoul is someone who was around before the war, and since they can have an extended lifespan, they're near immortal, you'll see them like still alive because they can't die of old age and stuff like that. So he's still alive after like over 200 years, because that's where the show's based off of, right? And we see glimpses of his past in the show, and like who he was, which he was an actor. He basically was the inspiration for the Vault Boy thumbs up. If you guys know what, those of you who've played the games and seen the Vault Boy thumbs up, he's the inspiration of it. And he was a Western actor. He did Western movies. And you see his like background, you see how he was with his, like, you see his daughter, and you see his wife, you see his family, and all the stuff he had, and his wife works for Vault-Tec, all those things, and you basically go down the path of like his backstory really does connect with Lucy, the main character. Though there are 3 main characters, Lucy is really the main character. The story is mostly centered around her. She is basically the player, right? And so there's a lot of connections to her and his like his history and her history, and so you have all these things going on. And pretty much in the show, you have like these big twists. You have these good Easter eggs too of things. Like the first town in the show that they go into really was actually based off a town from Fallout 3, which was Megaton. It was kind of loosely based off that, though it wasn't Megaton, of course, but it was loosely based off it. And you basically see like Lucy go through these like horrible things in the waste, like a robot tries to harvest her organs, she gets her finger cut off and then gets a replacement finger. And they have like this detail throughout the series now where like the replacement finger was kind of like grayish, like pale kind of, it was a pale kind of finger because it was an older finger, and you kind of see like the detail of her finger being like miscolored throughout the rest of it after she gets that finger. And you pretty much you just see her kind of descend to be more of a jaded person, not an extremely jaded person. She hasn't gone that far yet. She could go further throughout the seasons, but first season she does like kind of show her. She starts to lose her view of how she used to see the world, especially in the last episode. And Maximus, you know, Maximus and her have like a romance going on. They meet each other and then like fall in love with each other. But in the end of the series, Maximus kind of like becomes like the new leader of the Brotherhood, and Lucy left him because she thought like he died from like basically from an injury from like the main bad guy, which I can't go too far in depth. I mean, I know there's gonna be some spoilers, but I don't want to go too far into the spoilers of like the twist of the show. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to do that, but I will say it's a pretty big twist, and the bad guy isn't the bad guy you were expecting. The thing about the show is most of the Fallout games, it's usually you leave the vault to go find someone. Your dad, your son, all these things. And this show has this similar plot line of like her trying to find her dad. But they kind of do a little bit of a different take and a different twist, which kind of like is I personally think is a better twist and a better way of telling a story, as opposed to most of the games when they try to do twists. And this brings me to the point of why I think when it comes to what Bethesda does with Fallout, they kind of forget the one thing, and that is it's an RPG, right? They can't go and make a linear kind of one-way story, but they still kind of do that in the games, right? And it kind of weighs down on their story because they try their best not to go that far, making it one linear story, but it never works out. And it kind of robs from like good storytelling and good twists, I feel. And this show, I think, proves that. And granted, Bethesda was not the only people writing the show. They were supervising the show, but they were not writing the show 100%. But I think that this TV show shows that the games can have amazing stories with this company making them, but you'd have to not be an RPG anymore, and I think that's what kind of sucks. I feel like if you were to make a good like story-driven Fallout game, you would have to make a Telltale type of Fallout game with like interactive like decisions and things like that if you want it to be like perfect, but even then that would be still iffy. But that's where I kind of brought my point is this show is genuinely good. It has a good story. It has a good twist. It tells things perfectly. It makes you feel. But Fallout games never do that, right? They never do. Their story feels robbed half the time. And quite frankly, they shouldn't be robbed, because this shows that Bethesda, even though they may have had some help, can make some good stories if they really focus on only a story-driven game. And Fallout is just not one of those games, so they can't do that. Now, of course, let's talk about the one big elephant in the room, and that is some issues within the criticisms the show gets. Now, there's people mad about some more like tidbits here, where people think that basically the show takes away some lore elements of New Vegas. Now, New Vegas was Fallout New Vegas was a game not made by Bethesda, but made by the original creators of Fallout of the first two games, and pretty much people worried that Todd the God Howard, was going to go out his way and kind of just bastardize the entire thing, right? The entire lore of what New Vegas had, simply because it wasn't his writing and his story. And I'm going to tell you this real quick. They don't do that. In the end of the show, the literal last shot hints to that the next season is going to go to New Vegas in itself. So the fact that they even hint to New Vegas shows they're not trying to take away the idea of what New Vegas was. Sure, there may be some changes, because when you make a role-playing game show, or a show based off a role-playing game, the problem with it is you have decisions that are being made, and you might have different outcomes, different endings, or you've like done something in the game, and the show can't really adapt to that. So they might only stick to one ending from New Vegas just to make it easier to make a show, which sadly would mean that you do get a confirmed canon ending. But when you make a show about a game like this, there's only so much, right? There's only so much you can do. And I feel like it's blatantly wrong that people are thinking that Todd Howard is going out of his way to be this like petty person, when he's really not. You gotta cut him some slack on this. He shows respect to New Vegas. He doesn't like neglect it. The fact that people think that he neglects it is just crazy. But that's like the big issues I hear about the show. And quite honestly, the show is just it was amazing. Like it was just perfectly written. You felt for the characters. You could relate to the characters. You And I'm gonna like say this one thing about the show. I gave a criticism from the first episode, right, of one character who put their boot on, but they had like there was a razor blade in the boot, and so they put their boot on when they were all waking up. So the person put their boot on, and it stabbed right into their foot. And I was thinking when I saw that scene, I was like, how? Like if okay, so there's a razor in your boot, but you if you put your like foot in there a little bit, you might get a little bit of a cut, but you would have felt it. You wouldn't have been jabbed into your foot. You would have like put your foot down, felt like maybe a prick or something, and then pulled away. Maybe you'd slightly cut your foot, but that would be it. And I just find it really funny that the TV that I just thought it was really funny in that show. But what was amazing was in the last episode, they just like shot down my criticism on that, because it turns out the person did that to themselves because they were going to be sent out to the waste into like the real world, and they were afraid to do that and then go out there because, like I said, they were selected and they were afraid to go out there and go into the real world, into the waste. And so they did the like razor blade in the like boot on purpose, and so it makes complete sense how that even happened, how like your foot got that stabbed through and you didn't stop yourself, you did it on purpose. And so it makes a lot more sense. So my criticism was shot down at the end, and that was my big criticism from the show. It was like, what the hell? And then, of course, you get some like plot lines as well from the vault itself that Lucy leaves. There's an inner plot line of it within itself that like reveals a huge part that also ties into Lucy's story as well. And I just feel that this show was like a love letter to fans of Fallout, and I think it was amazing. My only big criticism that I can really say was the amount of sexual content in the show. And I only say that because the games never had this much explicit sexual content in the show, but this show has so much sexual content, right? Like they show like full on nudity. They have like pretty extreme sex scenes, and like I said, it's not like going too far to like an extreme, right? Like it's not like the worst of the worst. There definitely was worse movies and shows out there that have had sexual content like that, but this show, I feel like when it's based off Fallout, which may have references to like sexually explicit stuff, it was never outright and it was never shown. From my memory, it was never like a main focus of the games, and they never really like had any of that. Now, granted, it's not a main focus of the show, but I feel like it did feel odd that there was a lot of sexually explicit content in the show that isn't really normal for the Fallout franchise. But that was my only kind of little gripe, because it didn't fit with the game franchise. But it's not like it's something that would weigh the show down in itself. I think the weirdest and most explicit thing, right? That like you had sex scene, you had nudity, but I think the most explicit scene was when you saw in the show someone beating their meat in the bunkers, in the barracks of the Brotherhood of Steel. That was probably like the worst of the worst when it came to sexual content, because like I said, Fallout was never really all that sexual of a game from what I remember when of what I've played it. But that was basically my only gripe. But this show, I would give a 9 out of 10, 100%. The ending was amazing. They gave such a huge twist, and you felt so you felt fear. You'd feel like shivers down your spine kind of fear, and it's just a pleasant surprise to see how good this show was and how it turned out. And I can't wait for the second season. But that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Bye.